Yeah. I've been learning from the low tide, where the reef cuts deep and the water goes quiet. It's where the truth shows its bone. It's where I figured out the world don't owe me a thing, and neither does a part of me. I keep trying to outrun. I walk like a man who's seen both mercy and violence. Sit at the same table and argue about who shaped me more. Some days I side with the mercy. Some days the violence speaks first.
All right, kicking off another episode of Zen and Callsigns. Obviously, have another great guest, Theo van Dort. Thanks for being here on the show. Just a little background. Theo, originally from England, executive producer, strategist, actor, done a lot of different things, and you found yourself in Bali 8 years ago? 6 years ago. And then I think we met, our kids go to the Green School, and you invited me to be a part of your project you're doing, Brotherhood Blueprint.
Correct.
Thanks for having me on that. And so I wanted you to have you on here to tell me a little about yourself, your background, your story, more of the why behind the why. And so as we usually do, we'll kind of hand it over to Theo to go to his formative years, England. So tell us where you are, what you're doing, young Theo in England, and I'll hand it over to you. Let's go.
From the beginning?
Yes.
Wow. So I had a Dutch father
Okay.
and an English mother. My father actually grew up here in Indonesia until he was 12. And then there was, because he was from Dutch parentage, and then there was the uprising, and it became unsafe for the Dutch to be here. So they went back to Holland. And he only lived in Holland, I think, for about 10 years. And then he met my mum and then moved to England. So despite my having a very Dutch name, I grew up in England. Spoke Dutch at home till I was about 5.
Yeah.
And then when my grandparents both passed over, every other member of the Dutch family spoke English. So we stopped speaking Dutch at home. But it's quite amazing because there's a lot of Dutch people here in Bali. And I can still understand what they say. So it's still in there somewhere.
Yeah, interesting.
So I grew up in England. I had quite a difficult childhood. I was not in a family way. I had an incredibly loving family, but I was very sick. I got asthma. I was very allergic to lots of different things. I'm not sure what caused it. I have some ideas. So I would spend 3 of every 4 weeks I'd be at home, but I'd spend about a week in hospital with severe asthma attacks. From the age of about just after 12 months, my mum says, to about 3.5. And then when we were 3.5, we moved to a house that was not next to a river, and they got rid of the cats, understanding that actually this was probably caused by allergies. And we lived to a house that lived on a hill, and it started to get a lot better. I had a beautiful upbringing. I mean, it was the times, I'm just turned 51. So it was the time when you'd go out and play with your friends, and you'd come in when the streetlights came on. There was no mobile phones. There was no way of parents getting a hold of you.
Yeah.
We would just, we'd be out cycling, 16, 20 miles a day and not even thinking about it, because that's just what you did with your mates.
Yeah.
And not on bikes with gears. These are, bikes where you really had to pedal. So I had a beautiful, beautiful childhood. I've got a lot of fond memories of growing up.
Yeah.
The only thing was, my dad worked a lot. He was an entrepreneur, and I think he thought he was doing the right thing by being at work all the time. And he passed in 2005, and I did the typical thing of saying, "Hey, Dad, what would you do different?" He said, "I would have spent more time with you and your brother when you were kids." He said, "I've missed you guys growing up." We became very good friends when we were in our teens. So I've tried not to make that mistake. I've tried to really be a very present father to my 2 boys.
Yeah, I had that realization kind of mid-Marine Corps, where I'm like, stay in, work more, longer, not be a father. And it was an easy decision for me. Because that's like you, I've heard that many times. It's like, what else would you do?
And with the work that I'm doing now, with my project, the Brotherhood Blueprint, where I'm creating this documentary series, we'll talk more about it later, to help men to navigate, and to help the women that live with men to help them with men's mental health, vulnerability, sharing that it's okay not to be okay. And I don't think my dad knew how to be a dad.
Yeah.
Because his father was executed when he was 6 months old here in Indonesia. It was straight after World War II. he had a sugar cane plantation. My grandfather, who had the same name as me,
Wow.
he was born in 1898.
Do you know the details of that?
Yeah, I do. Because when the Japanese invaded, he was forced to keep the sugar plantation open. And at the end of World War II, there was so much, I can't imagine the trauma and the grief.
Yeah. Japanese were not nice. Wow.
So it was April 1945. My father was born. He had a sister that was 2 years older than him, who became a very famous actress in Holland. And he had a brother that would have been 16 years older than him, and another brother 18 years older than him the day he was born. And those two elder brothers were both put into concentration camp, prisoner of war camp.
And these are by the Japanese?
Yeah.
Oh.
And they managed to escape by playing dead. And my Uncle Rob only died about, I think, 6 years ago in his late 80s. And he was the last sibling alive. But he sat down and shared these stories when we were old enough to, and it's just what that generation lived through was quite horrendous. And after the war finished in 45, in the October 45, my grandfather was asked to go to the town square or the city square in Surabaya to apologize to the Indonesian people for collaborating. And he was a very strong-willed, stubborn man. And he said, I didn't collaborate. He said, the Japanese were here. If I hadn't have done what they'd said, they would have killed me. They would have killed my family. They would have killed all your families. And they weren't going to have it. Mm. So to cut a very long, very gory story short, they executed him when my father was only, 6 months old. So he never had a dad. He had a stepdad, but he never really had a dad. And I think that he just would stay away from home and work and overwork. Because I remember as a child listening to arguments and other adults having conversations. As a kid, you overhear stuff and you're like, should I be hearing that or not? And it was about how, he wasn't present for us as boys. And so, I really wanted to make sure that I didn't repeat that pattern. I think we get conditioning passed down to us whether we want it or not.
Indeed.
And it's up to us. As a beautiful man said to me, he said, you're this age group, sort of between 40 and 60 now. He said, we're the janitor generation. We're here to try to clear up and stop passing on all of these conditioning.
Yeah,
that we are given.
I see it as like I'm breaking that, breaking it, dude. I mean, and just everything we've chatted before, and how even there's a lot of similarities of raising kids, and it's, my dad's still alive, but it's just they have something. The boomer generation have something where they're like clinging still in some way, and so I see that. To be a janitor, maybe, but it's more of like a breaking that, because I'm not as I talked on when we chatted on the blueprint, where it's like what my dad said to me. I'm like, well, I would never say that to my son, and I don't think you would say that to yours. So it's kind of breaking that chain in a way. So
yeah.
So all right. So young Theo, high school. What are you thinking? What do you want to do with your life?
I wanted to act.
Oh, yeah.
From the age of 7.
What was there a particular person or thing that you're like, oh, I want to do that?
No, I think that the teachers spotted that I had a talent.
Yeah. We had the charisma, like you had something.
I was neurodivergent. I was ADHD, and I think it was something that they could just put me in that I would actually do and would be less disruptive.
Yeah.
I remember, I'll come back to that story in a moment, but yeah, I was put in a nativity play.
Yeah.
When I was 7 years old, I was a washerwoman. It was an all boys school, and I remember my first line was, "A woman's work is never done." That was my first and only line. And I think when they spotted me in that, then they thought, actually, I must have.
Have you ever said that to your wife by chance?
Oh yeah, she
loved it. Yeah.
Right. I think they spotted that I had a gift and I had a talent, and so the next year I did a little bit of a better role, and then the last year they made me the Christmas Dragon.
Okay.
And that and in a show called The Christmas Dragon, and I loved it.
Yeah.
And then that was I just having that ability to be on stage and knowing how to, even at that age, how to entertain an audience and control and those sort of things. So that was my dream, always, to go to drama school all the way through.
Yeah.
I wasn't very good at school.
Yeah.
I'm super bright if I'm interested in something, but try and teach me something I'm not interested in. It's like, it's not going in. Even if I try to make it go in, it's not staying in.
Yeah.
And so, I look back now with hindsight about the education system, and we can go there as well, but fascinating to see just how trying to stick all those children into one model and one box and thinking, why do some of them succeed and some of them fail? And I was told from 13 to 18 that I was never going to amount to anything by multiple teachers, apart from the ones that, saw my talent in drama and presenting and performing. And those are the ones that, really, really looked after me. But when I look back now with hindsight, what that does to a young person to be told that even if you go on to become a success, it's still there.
Oh my God.
That little voice on your shoulder of, who are you to do this? The imposter syndrome that kicks in.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't come from nowhere.
No.
All right. So acting.
So I wanted to go to drama school. So I did well in my 16-year-old exams. I flunked my 18-year-old exams before you go to university.
Yep.
I fell in love about 17. I was so young looking that when I was about 15, I looked 12. By the time I was about 18, I was lucky if I looked 15 or 16. But this one girl must have taken pity on me and started dating me. And we ended up, when it really happened, it was when I could drive, when I learned to drive when I was 17 in the UK. I think it's 16 in the US, but 17 in the UK. And the moment I had mobility and and independence, suddenly I became attractive to the opposite sex.
Yeah.
So I was very much into being a boyfriend, more so than I was being a student. And so flunked the A-levels, decided I wasn't going to go to university anyway because I just had such an unfun time the previous 5 years of learning. I was like, let's do something different.
Yeah.
So I want to go to drama school. And I said that to my father, and he said, nobody earns any money in acting. And he'd been an entrepreneur his entire life. He was like, if you want to go to drama school, he said, we can talk about it in a year. He said, but you need to come and work in my company for a year. And he had a computer software company. So I started in the production department, copying floppy disks. This is how long ago we're talking, and putting them into the boxes. And after about a month in there, I was seeing how they were shipping these packages out on a day-to-day basis. I was like, this is costing an absolute fortune, because they were taking each package and putting it on the scales and then just printing out this packing label. And obviously the guy that had done it before me was like, this is the way you do it. And I was like, there's got to be a way of sending this in bulk, and then you just weigh it all and they've got to give you a discount for it. And so I did this for about 3 days, and I was tracking the numbers. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. It's just like, he's spending an absolute fortune. So I went to talk to him and I said, listen, I reckon I can save him back then probably about £2,500 a month. And we're talking 30 years ago.
That's all. Yeah.
And he was like, because they were shipping a lot of packages out the door each day. And he was like, there's no way. I said, just look at these numbers. And he was like, maybe. He said, just get somebody else in. So the manager came and he was like, what? So I saved him more than my salary just by doing the job. So suddenly he was like, oh, there might be a brain in your head, because the same thing, education-wise, it was just been not succeeding. But obviously, when you find something you're good at, and for me, that's pattern recognition, systems, processes, being creative. Yeah. So I was like, okay, so that was fun. So then in the end, let's jump forward. I went from there into his technical support department, which I hated because it was computer accounting software, but learn about accounting. Then I went into the sales department, which I thrived in. Then I took myself to drama school, which I paid for myself, which was great. And then off the back of that, I started doing acting jobs, anything I could do, and ended up working a lot in schools. Okay. There's a bit of a taboo about TIE, theatre and education, but I loved it because I think secretly I wanted to be a teacher. And to go into a classroom with a bunch of kids and use acting and then workshopping, and we'd walk into a classroom and we'd learn every child's name in 40 minutes. And at the end, we'd go back and say, hey, we're talking to you about speaking and listening. To show you we've been listening, let's read back all their names. And some of the teachers are like that. I haven't done that in 3 terms or 3 semesters. How do you know all those kids' names in 40 minutes? Yeah. And I just thrived in that environment.
Well, it's like that's the thing of, I think, as we were chatting before this about neurodivergence and like that Venn diagram of, extremely gifted, ADHD, neurodivergent, that, where you reside, it's not one or the other. It's like, where do you reside in that? And like that, the gifts, everybody has one, and it's kind of identifying them. And then you push on that gift. Peter Drucker, he writes about, what's the book? Managing Oneself. And he talks about it like it's the theory and like empirically proven of like you identify that gift or where you're good at. You don't bring up all of the ones you suck at. You bring those up. You kind of like make sure you're not just completely inept, but the gift you push on because it just that brings all of the other things up with it. And then you have the superpower. So interesting. Okay, so acting. What do you have for like a good story from acting or favorite or moment that you have?
Well, I ended up working in this theatre and education company in the UK that actually changed my world. I would have been about 25, I think. So yeah, so I worked for 5 years, then 6 years, then I went to drama school, and then I went to work for this company. So I was a bit older than most of the other people that were there. But they had this old converted woolen mill in a little town called Holmfirth near Huddersfield in the United Kingdom. And they had a restaurant and theatre on the ground floor. Then they had these huge old rooms where they used to do the woolen work that they turned into dormitories. So it could sleep about 30 people. And then the floor above that, there were all these rehearsal rooms. And we would go in there and we did do school work, but they also had a lot of corporate jobs. So they do work for like Cadbury's and Coca-Cola and Schweppes and Lloyd's Bank. And they'd go into sort of do change management, but through theatre and workshops. My God, we used to just laugh because we'd get there on a Monday and they say, right, on Friday, you've got to go do this job for Coca-Cola and this is the problem they've got and make it happen. And so we'd just walk into a room, 2 guys, 2 girls. We'd have free reign of creativity. We knew what the goal was they wanted to achieve. And we would just write a 20 to 30 minute show that we had 3 days to write, rehearse, and then get to wherever this job was the night before to then go deliver it to these. So we just became so good at thinking on our feet about coming up with ideas about creativity. Yeah. We'd take whatever pop song was in the charts. We back then, I mean, we were still using mini disc players. We'd take the mini disc because you could actually start and stop it rather than the cassette. You had to rewind backwards and forwards, and the CD would just keep playing. So the mini disc, you had an element of control over. And we would go in and we'd rewrite the words to these songs based on the message. And when we walked into these rooms, you can imagine, in corporate world,
oh God, yeah,
they would hate us. Just the body language, they're sitting there, they're all like, crunched up in their chair. And after 15 minutes of being sung at by a bunch of guys and girls wearing feather boas and whatever else we would have, there was this element of guard that just dropped in these people because they were like, if they got the confidence to do this, there might be something to this. And we would just power through that. And then by the end, we'd do workshops. And by the end of the day, we'd have them all up. It's just breaking through those layers of comfortability. I saw such transformation, and the work we did in schools was just amazing.
I feel like thematics, like when it's a theme in schools, is like that is how children learn.
Yeah,
out of just in that excitement and however that cognition, that like the dopamine that changes to like, oh wow. So I just like love that, and it's so weird why it's almost looked at as almost like they poo-poo it.
Yeah,
when like that's probably the best actual way of learning.
Yeah, and most of us learn through stories, through analogy, through fable.
Yeah.
And we were just doing that and performing that in real life. And these kids couldn't help but to learn the lessons that we were being paid to teach them.
And very cool. So how long did you do the acting for? And I feel like it was improv though, basically.
It basically was improv. Yeah. And that's what we needed. We needed people that could just own it because we had such little time to prepare. That when somebody went off the script, because we had no time to learn the script.
I'm sure you went off the script a lot.
Oh my God. It was a lot of it was just made up. We know where we're going, but we have no idea how we're going to get there.
Were there any just like flops like, wow, these guys just suck and there's nothing we could do?
Well, that was the point where I could see this business. It was a hugely successful business. They won the Unisys Investor in People Award multiple times, but it was just growing too quick, and they couldn't get the acting talent that was good enough to be able to handle the pressure of doing these performances almost on the fly and making their company look good. And actually, I remember I rang up the office to say, you've basically sent me on the road with 2 mannequins. I said, I've got mannequins that actually have more personality and wit about them than these. Wow. Yeah. And I said, I'm out. I said, this is it. This is the last job I'm doing. And I was like, no, please don't. He said, it's okay. He said, ask those two to come back to the office, and we'll send two new people down to you. And I was like, well, I'm in the middle of a job. I'm not going to screw the company over by walking out. After working for them 3 years. And so I took these two actors back to the train, and then at the train station waited for these two other actors, and this Scottish guy came out that was super funny, sounded just like Billy Connolly.
Yeah.
And this blonde lady walked off the train, who is now my wife.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the universe works in mysterious ways. And then I left that because I met her, and I was like, I really want to be, this is the lady I want to, have a life with. And I was still quite young. I was like 25, 26 then. But I just knew. And I thought there's no money in acting. My dad's voice from 8 years previously was like, so I was like, the only way I'm going to make money in acting is to break into TV. But who gets to make it as a TV presenter? Not that many. And who gets to make it as a TV presenter that says they want to be a TV presenter? I was like, I've got to get in stealth. So we're going to have to go into stealth mode. And so a friend of mine had worked for a TV company, and I said, could I come and do some work experience there? And it was called the Money Channel. It was set up by Adam Faith, the pop singer in the UK. And I went to work for the Money Channel for this week of work experience, and I absolutely loved it. I mean, a live TV environment, live newsroom. I was doing the worst of the worst jobs, because that's what you do when you're just trying to get your foot in the door. Yeah. But I did my week's work experience, and I knew that the girl that I'd been shadowing was going on holiday for 2 weeks. So I said to the guy that ran the whole floor, I said, could I come back and cover for her while she's away for 2 weeks? And he was like, yeah, but we can't pay you. I said, I don't mind, because I'd been working for, all those years. I still had my own, and I was still living at home, so I had reserves. And I remember I would just catch the first train that I could get in the morning up there, and I would get to the last train I could get home. And they'd never seen, over the years, I'm sure many people can resonate that you hire people and think they're going to be great, and then they're not. Yeah. And then the odd one that you hire, you think, but then they turn out to be fantastic. I just made sure I was that fantastic person. Yeah. Because I'd had a work ethic since I was 18 years old. I saw, and I'd seen the frustrations my dad would have in his business and things he'd come home. So, no. I was like, I'm just going to make myself invaluable to these people. Yeah. In the hope that they'd give me a job at the end of it. So that's what I did. Worked early, went home late. And then at the end of the 3 weeks, I had made myself invaluable. I won't go into the long story of it, but I booked up show guests where they couldn't get it by ringing up, pretending to be the son of the CEO of a tech mark company just to get past the gatekeepers. So so once you get these people on the phone, say, we'd like you to come in and talk about your stock on the TV and this Money Matters show. They would always, and we'd send you a car. Addison Lee will come and pick you up. You'll get the footage afterwards. You can show it to your friends. They'd all go, yeah. But you couldn't get to those people through the gate because of the acting experience. I would just bypass all of that. And so I booked them up a month's worth of guests in 2 days. And they were like, how did you do that? I said, it's just, you're going to have a bit of blag on the phone. And and so I walked over to the guy, and I knew they had no money. I knew they were running out of money. They had no head count. And I went over to him. Richard Chalk, his name was. And I said, Chalky, I'm so grateful to you for this. I said, I've had the best 3 weeks of the last couple of years. I said, I've learned more. I said, I've just enjoyed it so much. And because you gave me this experience, I said, I've got work experience at Sky News next week. And I shook him by the hand. I said, thank you. And I walked away. And I knew, I just went back to the desk and I sat there and I was like, they ain't going to let me go, because I know how hard it is to find good people. And I had this inner confidence. It took about 45 minutes, and he came over, he went, he's like, I've just been to the head of the company. He said, we have absolutely no budget left for headcount. He said, but I've managed to get you a role if you would like it for 3 months, but we can only give you this much a month. And I was like, I'll take that. I said, I'm right at the beginning of this journey. I said, I understand everybody needs to learn, and I'll get this. So I took the job. Of course, there was no Sky News next week. I just knew that I had to play some sort of leverage card to get it. And it wasn't lying. I wouldn't, because I don't lie. There's a big difference between lying and leverage.
Something.
Huh?
Well, I think like anything, something would have worked out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's...
Well, the 3 months was astonishing, except then my lifelong definition of irony is the Money Channel ran out of money.
Oh, yeah.
Because having worked as a technical support for an accountancy team, I knew that they were burning $400K a month and bringing in $40K in ad revenue. Well, you don't have to be an accountant to know that is not a sustainable business. Yeah. And so that I dropped out of that. And then I was a rugby player. I don't look like a rugby player, but I was super quick and I loved it. And that's what I did when I was 18 because everybody else went to uni. I didn't know anybody. I joined my rugby club. I still have, hundreds of friends from that experience. That was really my first experience of Brotherhood, but it was less listening and more drinking and playing sport.
Yeah.
And I got sent when the Money Channel ran out of money. I was like, I need cash to keep going. And so I went to work on my friend's building site and I had to demolish a TV studios. That was the job. So I went from working in a TV studio to demolishing a TV studio. And they had all this amazing equipment and they were telling me to throw it in a skip. And then I started taking out the skip and put it in my car. They said, you can't do that. It's not your equipment. You have to put it in the skip. And I was like, but that's just going to go in landfill and this stuff's worth money. And they were like, you can't do it. So in the end, I would fill up the skip very carefully at one end, and then I'd drive back my car when the site was closed, and I'd get this stuff. And then I was there making more money selling things on eBay that they were going to throw in a landfill than I was actually doing the building work. And then I got a call from the theatre company saying, do you want to come back? So I went back to the theatre company. I worked there for a little bit, discovered that we were in real trouble because the show that I'd gone into, it was a friend of my father became terminally ill and they needed to pull him out. So they said, would you come in because you know the part? And when I got there, this was actually more of a structured show. When I got there, the guy that was still there played the same part I played. So neither of us knew the other lines and we had to start delivering shows the next day. I was like, okay, so we're going to turn the show into This Is Your Life. There was a TV program called that where Michael Lasswell had this book and he would read people's lives out, successful people, and they would bring them into the studio. I said, so we're going to quickly change it to this so I can have the script in the book. So you got to think on your feet. And then they said to me, a producer rung me from the Money Channel and said, they're setting up a shopping TV company. Do you fancy coming to be a producer in a shopping TV company? And I was like, yeah, let's go find out what that's all about. So I went along, I put on my blue suit and I put on my light blue shirt and my red tie, a bit of Anthony Robbins power dressing. And
I saw that. You look very different. Just straight lace, different
straight face
tie.
and a beard.
Yeah.
Still looking 12 when I was 26.
Yeah.
And I went along for this job and they gave me the producing job.
Wow.
And so I then spent 3 months as a shopping television producer. So we had to prepare what the products were and learn all about them. And then I'm just feeding the presenter, thinking I want to be the presenter, all this, what to say, giving them all the ideas. And I was just waiting for that opportunity to present. This is now 3 years of playing the long game. Yeah. And one night the presenter didn't turn up, and then the assistant presenter didn't turn up, and it was a Saturday night, and they said we're going to have to go dark, as in we can't have the channel on. I went, I'll present. And they're like, you can't present. I said, I'm a trained actor. I've been to drama school. I said, I sit there every night telling them what to say. I said, I think I can do it. And went, we can't take that risk. I said, so you'd rather take a risk of going off air for an hour, losing an entire hour or two's worth of revenue, than letting me have a go where I'm probably going to sell something you're going to make more than just not having the channel on. He was like, well, when you put it like that. So I went on and I rung everybody I knew. I texted everybody I knew. I was like, buy stuff. This next 2 hours, buy stuff. Yeah. What's the channel, buy stuff. And then they did. And we're sitting in the studio and there's with Bali, from Bali with Love, James Bond picture over there. Yeah. That I had a James Bond memorabilia hour. Oh, that's and my funny. Uncle was a James Bond fanatic, and he'd made me sit every Christmas and watch James Bond movies. So I knew all of them. So I knew what to talk about. I knew how to sell it. Oh my! Anyway, God. I did so well on that Saturday night. I remember the guys in the rugby club had me on the TV in the rugby club, and they were calling out, and they bought some Casino Royale chips, some casino chips from the movie that we were selling that night. And the guy still got them. He said I spoke to him. This is such a long time ago. And that was my moment. That was the in. And
they were just like, "Oh, you crushed it."
I never produced again, and then I went on to present a lot of live TV. So I have a karmic debt for selling all these people stuff they wanted but didn't necessarily need.
Hey, that's good stuff. James Bond stuff. It's only going to go up in value.
That was
maybe not.
That was the pinnacle, and little did I know it at the time.
I see. Interesting. So from that point, you were in front of the camera.
I was in front of
Well, I mean, I feel like not that acting and not camera presenting, but now it's kind of like a culminating moment of 3 years of, that's a lot of work, dude.
Yeah.
To get to that opportunity like that.
But again, fun. After school was just like pulling teeth.
Yeah.
To then work in an industry where I just couldn't learn enough. I couldn't wait to go there in the morning. I couldn't wait. I almost didn't want the day to end because I was just having so much fun. And then every Saturday, I'd kind of leave there. I'd go rugby training. Then Saturday, I'd go play rugby with my mates. I'd drink too many beers. And then Sunday, I'd get up. And Monday, the whole thing started over again. I was just like, it doesn't get much better than this. Wow. But you don't realize it at the time.
Yeah.
Of course.
When do you have hindsight onto it?
When?
Yeah.
Every day.
Okay. So you're like, I'm so thankful my life is so good. Like, at least you have that. It's like that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Even this morning I was walking on the beach here. I mean, we're blessed to live on this island. Yeah. It took a lot of balls. It took a lot of courage to jump, to leave everything familiar and move somewhere like this. But just every single day, I'm just like, thank you.
Where'd that come from of like always being thankful for that day? Like, has that always been there for you?
No. It's only as I get older.
Okay.
I think when you're younger, you just think that everything's going to be good.
Yeah.
You think everything's, you think this is when it's good. You just, of course it's good.
This is how it is.
This is how it is. Little do you know, and then the universe comes and punches you.
Yeah.
Several times.
Yeah.
I'll get to that.
Okay. All right. So producing. So kind of give me how old, what year to kind of at that moment.
So I would have been by then. I'll have to think about this. That would have been about 2000 no, it was 99. So that was 99, 2000, 2001, 2002. So we're talking 24 years ago. So he's still 26, 27.
Okay.
26, 27 years old.
And then so how long are you in front of the camera doing that style of stuff?
Well, that channel that I started presenting for, I then got a call from a friend who knew that I was working in shopping TV, and he just sold a computer peripherals company in the UK to great Universal stores that own the Argos Group and the big catalog companies. And he said, we know about distribution, we know about product, we know this, we know nothing about shopping TV. Would you come and have a chat with us about it? And I'd worked in that industry for about 1.5 years by then. I said, yeah, I'd love to. And he basically said to me, I think age 27, do you want to be our sales director? We're starting this thing from scratch. We're starting this company. They wanted to create a toys, games, and hobbies channel on TV. So they only wanted to sell toys, games, and hobbies to parents. We thought it was a good idea at the time. Little did we know. And so we launched this channel with the 4 of us that started it, and then a team of 8. There were 12. We went through 7 different incarnations of channel over the next 2 years because every single thing we tried flopped terribly. We got hired by Nightingale Conant's team, Successories, to sell all the self-development courses on TV. The shopping TV audience don't do self-development. We tried to sell mobile phones for the Car Phone Warehouse. Nobody that watches shopping television has enough credit to get a mobile telephone. They would only do pay-as-you-go, so that didn't work. We tried so many different things. And then one day we went to a factory outlet mall in the south of England and saw all these people walking around with these bags of goods that were designer goods, but that didn't, they were last season or last generation, but these people seem to want to buy all this stuff at reduced prices. We're like, factory outlet TV, let's do that. Let's buy anything and everything we can get our hands on that's got a label on it, that's being sold off at in bulk, and then sell it on TV. And suddenly this channel started to work after this whole time of not doing it. And then we decided we'd do a reverse price auction, so like a Dutch auction. So instead of the price going up as it does on eBay, the price comes down. So you start with we could then call it a guide price. You can't do that anymore. So say back then DVD players was a huge thing. So if we had a Panasonic DVD player and it was cost £149 in the shop, yet we'd managed to buy them for like £29, for example, we would say guide price for £149. It's only 3 available. And then we would start talking about it, selling the DVD player, the benefits of DVD, what it does, why it's not a VHS, why it's not a Betamax, all those things. And then you position it in somebody's life and then say, okay, now we're going to drop the price from 149 to say 79. So they already see they're getting a 50% discount, but it's all visible on screen. So we gamified TV. We were the first company to gamify TV in the UK. I don't know if in the world, because you couldn't really watch US TV back then the way we did it. And but of course, you're introducing every psychological thing, because the price is going down. You're introducing scarcity because the quantity is going down. And the moment that somebody, if you were sitting at home, if you were Blake in Bournemouth and you decided you were going to buy one of these DVD players, if you'd ever called our channel before, our phone line would recognize your telephone number. And I, as the presenter, start saying to you, Blake in Bournemouth, you know that you've seen this before. You've got a great value. So there's somebody at home that suddenly got significance because you're talking to them, and they love it because you're part of the family. We took the mickey out of ourselves, as in, we laughed at ourselves. If something went wrong, we told everyone. All the other shopping TV channels were super serious. Ours was, a bit like Eddie Murphy in that movie Holy Man, where he goes into the TV studio and starts chopping stuff up with a chainsaw, and it's the best ratings they've ever had. Right. We were like that. And so we just had so much fun doing these sales, doing these products. The gamification worked an absolute treat, and the quantity would go, the price would go, and when the last one sold, say it was sold at £59, everybody that came in paid £59. So even though you came in at, what did I say, 79, 69, you're still paying £59. So by gamifying TV, we quadrupled our turnover in a weekend.
Wow.
The business, literally the week before, we were like, we're going to have to close this down. We just couldn't do it. And then a guy came in called Don Kogan. The night before, I've missed a stage that all my acting friends from this theatre company, Crag Rats, phenomenal performers, think on their feet, not salespeople, I brought them all in to be presenters. So they went from earning absolutely nothing to actually now earning a decent salary. We all shared a house together. We went back to doing what we were doing in theatre, but now we were just doing it with less late nights, because we had to actually work properly hard for, in a business. So I had all these incredible entertainers that came in to entertain on TV, because there were times where you're not selling anything because nobody's watching, and then there are other times where the phone's ringing off the hook, but you need to be able to carry through both. So I had all these brilliant people that came in and joined this thing. And then one night, my friend Nick and I'll never forget this. It was like at 10:30 at night, and we had to sell this Samsonite luggage suitcase set. And he said to me, "How are we going to sell these?" I said, "We're live on it." And he said, "Oh, chat. He said, so tell me about these suitcases." I said, "Nick," I said, "Samsonite, strong brand." He said, "Yeah." I said, "Let's test how strong it is." He was like, "What?" I said, "Put me in this suitcase." He's like, "What?" He said, "Put me in the suitcase. I want to feel what it's like to be a piece of luggage." So he puts me in the suitcase. He's wheeling me around the studio. Of course, I'm on a radio mic, so I'm talking from inside the suitcase. Well, we sell the suitcases out because we just did stupid stuff. Anything you could do to change it, or to make people look at it a different way, or to make it funny or entertaining. Yeah. We ended up becoming the break between on the commercial breaks. We knew when the commercial breaks were on the UK terrestrial channels, and we would time the best product of the hour to start just before that commercial break would come. And we then discovered through doing focus groups with people that what they would call shit clicking. So as in that shit, click, click,
shit
clicking.
Yes,
and so we would make sure that when the commercial breaks came on and they were busy watching their favorite soap, when they came over, what we were selling was so good at such a good price that we'd hook them in and we'd keep the viewers. And then they wouldn't go back to their soap. It was just that we had so much fun. It was like the best sales learning environment ever, because you can't hear any objections. You have no idea what the objection of the person is. You just have to try to think, if I was on the other end and I was interested in this product, what would I want to hear, and what objections would I want to meet? And then we talk about those. So this guy, Don Kogan, walks into our offices in Birmingham. Right, it's a long way from London to Birmingham by car, 2.5 hours. And he just turned up one day. We're like, this is odd, really odd. And he walked into the reception. He said, "I want to talk to the blonde guy that was in the suitcase last night." The receptionist is sitting there. She's like, "What are you talking about?" That's fine. Because of course they're not watching it 24/7.
Yeah.
He said, "I want to talk to the blonde guy that's in the suitcase last night." And she was like, "What did he look like?" He said, "Oh, he's about 5'9", and he's got blonde curly hair, and he was on TV last night." And she was like, "Oh, that must be Theo." So she comes upstairs. She goes, "Were you in a suitcase last night?" I said, "Yeah, I was." She was like, "There's a guy in reception who wants to talk to you." I said, It sounds a bit frightening, because nobody ever turns up to our studios because we're in the middle of nowhere. So I come downstairs. He goes, "Yeah, you're the guy in the suitcase." He said, I'm Don Kogan. He said, "I'm here to do an exclusive deal with QVC because they want to buy my gemstone jewelry." He said, "But I don't want to sell it the way they sell it. I want to sell it with your game." So I was like, "Okay, let's have a chat." So because we were a small business, the four of us got together in the room with Don, and he was like, "I want to try selling this stuff on TV." okay, how do we do that? And he said, well, I can teach you about the 4 main gemstones. And he said, and let's try it. Of course, we were live TV. We could. So he gave me me and my friend Debbie gave us a 2-hour lesson in gemstone jewelry. We went on TV. We crashed the phone lines because all the other networks had already educated the customer as to what gemstone jewelry should cost. It's an average of 1,000% markup. So if we go and buy a piece of jewelry in the shop, it's been marked up 1,000%.
Yeah.
And he would source as close as he could to the mines, and then he would take it to the handcrafting facility in Thailand, and then he would ship it to us, and then we would sell it to the customer. So there was no more middlemen. So we completely disrupted the UK jewelry market with this channel. And we thought it was a fluke. 2 weeks later, we went on, we did it again. We bolstered the telephone lines, we cleaned up, and then 2 weeks after that, we decided we were going to close down everything else, and we were just going to sell gemstone jewelry on TV. So we went from an 80,000 square foot warehouse to about 8,000 square foot. So the costs, everything else, and suddenly we had a product. If I was selling a pots and pans set or a barbecue set or a kid's toy or an electric bike, if that product went out, this is the biggest problem Amazon's got, or any online e-commerce store has got. When the product comes back, you can't sell it again. With a piece of jewelry, you can, because you just pressure clean it, you steam clean it, you put it back on the shelf, you can sell it again. So suddenly we had no stock issue. All these issues that we had by turning into this big shopping TV company just went away by micro niching down.
Wow.
And by then, they decided they wanted to merge their gemstone jewelry business with our TV business. And at the end, we listed that company on the Singapore Stock Exchange. And what we started with 4 of us and a team of 8, we employed, I think, 2,200 people globally.
Wow.
And I wasn't 30 yet.
Incredible.
Which was a hell of a rush. And to go to Singapore and to see your company name that you've built from the bottom go up on the ticker, that was quite amazing.
Incredible. So give me the time frame of how old was started and then kind of like to that point.
Well, I think that we listed in the November of 2006, and I was born in the 75. So we listed when I was 31 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
But.
Yeah.
There's a but. There's always a but. We were tied in for 12 months. And we couldn't sell anything. We couldn't get anything out. And the guy, I need to be careful what I say here, without naming any names, took all the money that we raised in the listing to set up Gems TV. China, Japan, United States. We already had UK at the same time, without any of us that understood the business allowed to be involved. And because we were young and naive and on this roller coaster ride up, by the time we could sell our shares, the business was broken.
Oh, wow.
And so, watched my net worth on paper go from here to here to here, and there's nothing I could do about it. Wow. Still walked away with a decent sum, after 12 months. But obviously, the day that 12 months came up, everybody just sold. And then the good news is my business partner, my UK business partner that I set it up with originally, he bought the whole business back, I think for less than he paid for the TV studios in the first place.
That's funny.
And it's still running now. They just had their 21st anniversary.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
How many years was that doing that? But like, and you sold, you left, did you change kind of career, like change jobs?
Well, I wasn't allowed, as part of the contract, I wasn't allowed to compete.
Yep.
So I spent a year doing the most strange and random stuff that I loved. I went to learn NLP. I became an NLP practitioner, neuro-linguistic programming.
Yeah.
I became a reconnective healer. I learned kinesiology. I went traveling and backpacking around New Zealand and Australia. I just went at anything and everything that I thought I'd love to do and had never done before. I went and did it. I went and learned it. And that was fun.
Wow.
Just taking a year out and then having the ability to do that was just thinking that all this money was coming in the future, 12 months time. That's a lesson in life. The jam tomorrow trick.
Yeah.
And so that was a very strange year.
Cool.
And then that was 2007. That was 2008. I did that. And then 2009, my son was born.
Okay.
But I had to go get a job. And so I went to work for another shopping TV channel and I became their sales director for a year.
Okay.
And that was a completely different beast.
Oh, I can imagine.
Because it was a massive company, 180 million turnover. The model was broken and they'd just been bought up for like €1. And then this German, what is it, a restructuring company, and they brought me in to see whether I could help them turn it around, and there was no turning that around.
Oh, okay.
So I did 12 months, and then I left because I just thought this is not a good thing.
Yeah.
But I learned so much about live TV, about presenting. I did 1,800 live hours presenting.
Wow. In a year?
No, over the period. Over that time period. But that's a lot, of presenting time.
Well, I feel like that's showing up, being on display in whatever fashion. That's a lot of time to be cameras on. Somebody's watching.
Yeah.
To just, again, I feel like there's always my grandfather talked about how he would be on eating with his father. So my great-grandfather, pretty hard life, Florida. And they'd be, having manners, and they were just like, well, why aren't you doing that? And he's like, I'm not on display anymore. And I don't know why that came to mind for you, of just like you're on display. So it's just, it's like, it's like a persona you're putting on. It's like, it's you, but it's just, but somebody's watching, How do you look at being, solitude? Since you're such an extrovert and kind of like that, how does that?
I'm not an extrovert.
Okay, there we go. Okay.
I would say I'm an introverted extrovert.
Yeah.
I can switch it on whenever I need to, but actually my favorite time is if I'm driving somewhere in silence. I have not had the radio on in a car or a bike for years. If I walk, I do not listen to podcasts. I don't listen to stuff because actually I think, jumping forward to when I discovered I was neurodivergent, how I didn't realize it before. Yeah. It was that moment of wow, and I think that's why I enjoy it. For me, that is meditation.
Yeah. Well, I guess
for just having that.
Well,
stillness
explain
in
to
my
me
head.
that your psyche then. You're an introvert, but you like the extrovert. So tell me what that means exactly.
I hate small talk.
Okay.
I find it very difficult meeting new people for the first time. Nobody would ever know it, but I do. I networking events and things. If I can find some sort of commonality, and I'm very good at asking open-ended questions because I was a presenter, but I just find small talk difficult, and it took me till I was a lot older to realize that I'm just not comfortable with it. And it was then I remember hearing this term, introverted extrovert, and it was this test that you answered all these questions, and it came out, said, you're an introverted extrovert. I was like, oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. I can switch it on. I can be Theo the actor. I can be Theo the presenter. I can be Theo the dad. I can be Theo the husband. I can be Theo the friend. I can be Theo the rugby player. I can be Theo the whatever you need me to be, because I can be a chameleon. But actually, my preferred internal state is quiet and calm. And living here has allowed that to happen a lot more.
Yeah.
And now working on this project, which I'm doing mostly by myself, I like it. But then I also love being around other men, and I love being around families, and I love being around. But once there's a level of comfortability and a level of, you've got through that beginning meeting someone new stage, that's the bit that I find quite tricky. Just sitting at a dinner, and you don't know the people next to you, and you ask 2 or 3 open-ended questions, and you don't get any open-ended questions back, and then I get to that point. My friend, I went to a wedding in Mexico, and my friend he's got a 3-question rule. 7-question rule. 7-question rule. He says it used to be 3, but he decided to be more generous. He said if he asked somebody 7 questions and they don't ask him 1 question back, he will never speak to that person again.
I love that rule. Good rule, man.
It was just it's actually quite strong. He said, because if they don't ask 1 thing back, he said they're either not interested, bored, or so self-indulgent that they don't care, or they don't know that they don't know that they don't care.
And you're like, and I don't want to be friends with you. Okay.
Yeah. So we were at this wedding in Mexico. We went there. It was a beautiful guy that we'd been at school with. So we're all there, and only one guy brought his wife, and the rest of us were there solo. And so it was like, getting a bunch of teenagers together again, though we were in our late 40s and early 50s. And we had just had so much fun. But there were people at this wedding, and I could see him, and he was asking question, come over, never speak to them again. And of course, there was this little internal joke about that. It was going to be awkward. We're here for 3 days. But doesn't matter. Never ask a question.
I think it's a good rule, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought like that's generous, but I guess 7.
Yeah, but if you're sitting next to someone at dinner, you know,
true.
you need. I think you need at least 7.
Yeah, that's right. All right. We're getting close to kind of, all right. So you finished out that 1 year at sales director, and then you, I think you had, then you go from there.
So then my friend was a beautiful man called John Sandifer. He was a feng shui expert, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
He'd spent years learning his craft, and you know, he'd had Eastern teachers and gone to the Far East a lot to learn. And he was teaching in the UK, and he'd run these weekend courses and these longer courses. And because I just left the TV business, he came over and he said, "Would you consider turning my course into online?" He said, "Because I'm getting really tired of teaching it all the time in person." This was early. This is 2012. This is well before online courses were a thing. And I said, "Yeah, John, of course." I said, "Dinner, let's talk." Oh,
That's me.
that's you. I thought that's the same ring as me. I was like, surely I've not made that. It's probably one of your children. They get through airplane mode because they're on the emergency setting.
It is one of my kids, actually. Hold on, let me get it.
Well, it might be an emergency. Either that or they're going to ask for money for food. That's usually what my kids do. Hey, Mate. Eat it. That's my driver, so. Go do it.
That's hilarious. That's funny.
Look at that. There's a book on feng shui next to me.
Hey, Made. Did Hey, baby, I can't hear you. Oh, Paxton, you're breaking up, baby. I can't hear you. What do you need? Is it okay with their parents? Only if it's okay, and then tell Made that that's fine. Okay. All right. Love you. Bye-bye.
Of course, you're the solo parent.
Yep.
There's no one else to delegate that responsibility to.
Yep. So she's can't go to her friend's house. So.
Oh, bless her.
All right.
So we jump back to the you asked, what did you ask me? You were like, what happened? I said,
Feng Shui master. Who,
yeah, I was just trying to think.
You're going to be doing courses for him 2012.
Yeah. No, I know what to say. I'm just trying to think back to so you can chop it together without it.
Figure it out.
Okay. So John said to me, "I would like you to stand at the back of the room with a camera and film me teaching my courses." I said, "John, how long are your courses?" He went, "It's 8 weekends." I said, 16 days? And he said, "Yeah." I said, "John, no one in their right mind will sit at home on their computer and watch you, as good an orator as you are, share your content over 16 days. I said, "There's got to be a better way of doing this." I said, "Let's sit down with a piece of paper and a big piece of paper, and let's work out what you teach over the 16 days and how we crunch it down."
Yeah.
And that was me creating my first ever online course 14 years ago. And so we crunched it all down. We actually got it down to 20 hours of content. And then I came up with this model of how do I present this in a fun way that it's not just him talking to camera for 20 hours. I said, there was a guy called Armand Morin who had language courses and cassettes in the car, because I spent a lot of time driving. I would be learning languages in the car. I say I don't listen back then I did. As I got older, I don't ever have it on, but that's how long ago it was when I still had cassettes. But the way Arma Morin would teach his language courses is he would be teaching a language to 2 students in the room, and you as the listener in your car and in your Walkman or wherever it was would be learning as the 3rd student to these 2. So you'd be hearing their mistakes, you'd be hearing him correct them, and it was a brilliant way of learning. It didn't feel like it was just you. It felt like you were in a community learning with other people. Obviously, you're never going to meet them. And I spent so much time listening to these tapes thinking this is a great method of learning. I was like, why don't I do that in a video environment? Because people like to watch chat shows. People like to watch podcasts. Why don't we do online learning like that? And so I said, John, why didn't you teach me all the content? And I asked the questions that the person at home would want to ask. He said, yeah, that's a great idea. So that's what we recorded. Yeah. So we recorded our first online course together. And then it cost me, because I was paying for it because John didn't have any money and I just got out of the shopping TV business. It cost me back then £11,000, which into today's rate's about 14,000 US in edit, because it took that long to edit multiple cameras for 20 hours of footage. I was like, I'm never ever doing this again. There has to be. But I come from a live TV environment where we press a button and everything mixes. And I was like, there has to be software on the market that can do that. And back then it cost a lot of money to set up a TV studio. And I was like, there's got to be a way of doing this. And then they brought out some kit that allowed you to do it. In fact, your man over there is using that same kit now. It's a live switcher. So I brought that into the video studio environment, and I started making online courses, and then I built my own video studios. And so I got paid to sit there and help people make courses and learn the best information. And I think I made upwards of 60 courses with people. Oh, wow. And I helped them structure them and put them together and understand, because a lot of people can't deliver straight to camera and keep it interesting, keep it engaging, and keep their own energy up. But for us to sit here, we could sit here and talk all day. Right. We'd have a coffee and we have a glass of water and we have a wee break, but you could talk all day. And then when the learner is learning like that, it was brilliant. And I did little subtle things like, because I would get, if you were the expert, I'd get you to talk to the camera, right? Because I want to include the viewer. I call it inclusive video. And it's actually more about them than it is about us. But then on the front of that camera, I put an auto cue, but instead of an auto or teleprompter, I'd have an iPad and it would just have a picture of their ideal client. Because most people freeze up when they stare down that black hole. And
that's funny. Wow.
So unconsciously or subconsciously, then they're being reminded the whole time who they're talking to. It was just little things like that. And it just worked. And because we were live vision mixing it, I mean, we could make an online course in one day, just like you're doing with this podcast, because it's being live vision mixed. But I would get them in. We'd create 6 or 7 hours of content in a day. And I never failed to deliver in over 72 or 3 working days. Wow. They'd have their whole course while everybody else was taking months. So I just became the go-to guy for all these people making online courses. And I would handle the intro. I almost did it. I almost turned to your camera then. I would handle the intros. I would handle the outros. So that's usually the bit where it goes wrong. And then they just had to sit there and share their knowledge in a fun way, and me bringing analogy and lifestyle and all the other things to it. And laughter. I'd always bring laughter in, because people learn more when they're enjoying themselves. Oh, yeah. So then that became my passion for like 5 or 6 years. That's the next stage of the story. And then we moved to the documentary world.
Wow. So again, it's interesting when I have people here to sit across from me. Everybody kind of tells their life story. And it's always, you see these like building blocks. Most everybody's is relatively successful, but there's friction, there's roadblocks or failures. But then it's like, with the turn of that, there's always like, it was just simply a step. It was a process to get where you were. And I think, going into like even documentaries of like, do you feel like you had to have all of these little pieces to go into that world, in the documentary world?
I had no idea what I was going to do. It's 2015. My eldest son is then 6 years old. He's already been in 4 different schools. No school could hold him. So neurodivergent, so brilliantly bright, but asked too many questions, couldn't sit still, thrown out of every club he went into, gym club, swimming club, rejection. And as parents, that's hard to watch because, like, you know, and at times you think, what's wrong with this kid, you know? But actually, he's just beautiful and gifted. But when you're in it and you have those moments of, oh God, why can't he just be like all the other kids? Why can't he be normal? Those processes go through your head, and of course, then you come back to, oh, screw normal. So my wife spoke to a friend of hers, and she said, you need to take him to an educational psychologist because they're going to, you know, work out how best you guys can help him and serve him. So she treks up to Greenwich, Greenwich Mean Time, to meet this lady. And she said the only school system that's going to be supportive of this beautiful soul is Steiner, the Steiner education system, where they don't teach until, the Steiner philosophy was you don't teach children until the age of 7. And then by then their brains are developed enough to learn. But before that, they're still going to school, but they're learning through play. So we then moved from London down to Forest Row. We just built our forever home, and London to Forest Row is a long way. Well, not. I mean, it's an hour and a half but it's too far to commute for a school. And so I then closed down the video studios and moved to this beautiful biodynamic village where the Steiner headquarters were, the Christian Scientists headquarters were, the Mormon headquarters were. So there's obviously something very special about that area and that land. And I didn't know what I was going to do. So in the end, I rented a big house and I put the video studio in the house. So, and then I would have guests come in. Of course, we're living in the forest and it's incredible. It's beautiful there because it's where Winnie the Pooh was written. A. Milne wrote Winnie the Pooh, and the 100-acre wood is actually 6,000 acres of woodland. It's Henry VIII's hunting ground, and that's why it got protected because it had royal decree on it. So that's where they go hunting boar. Beautiful place to live. But then the video studio thing wasn't really working because people didn't want to come down from London because it was such a way. There was no train station nearby. It just became a bit of a pain. And I'd made a lot of video courses by now, and I was like, I'm sort of getting a bit tired of it anyway. So I and I was like, I'm just going to give myself a bit of break. I'm going to give myself a bit of a time, be a dad, take the kids to school, which I did anyway, but just more of that element, and enjoyed living in the forest. And then one morning, my wife says to me, what are you going to do? And it wasn't what are you going to do today? It was when are you going to leave this house now? Because you've been at home for 3 months and I want my own space. And I said, I'm going to learn to be a sound healing guy. I don't even know what the terminology for it is. She was like, what? I said, I'm fascinated by resonance, by sound, by Tibetan healing bowls, by crystal bowls. Yeah. They have an effect on the body. How does that work? I'm going to learn that. I'm going to go and find out about that. She's like, okay. This is Friday morning. Saturday morning, I get up. I'm going to play rugby. Drive back to my old village, play rugby for the day. No more drinking because I was driving. Still enjoyed the physical activity of and the team, the camaraderie. I come back. I went for lunch today with some friends, and there was a lady who sat down at the table and said, "I'm looking for a sound healing apprentice." And she was like, "Do you think that's a sign?" I said, "I think that's a sign. I love the signs. I love the universal breadcrumbs. If you follow them, sometimes the most wonderful things happen." Yeah. So I went to meet this lady. I did 3 sessions of sound healing apprenticing with her. And then she told me about this movie that she'd made called Time of the Sixth Sun. And it was based on the Mayan prophecy of 2012, that the Mayan said that we were going to move from this time of the fifth sun, which was all about vertical energy. It was about war. It was about male dominance, masculine dominance rather than male dominance, into the time of the divine feminine for the next 5,200 year cycle. And it started in 2012. And I was like, okay, tell me more about that. And so she told me about the movie. I said, what have you done? She said, well, I've been to all these different countries around the world and I've interviewed all these indigenous elders. I said, what are you going to do with it? She said, well, I haven't finished it. She said, I need a load of money to finish it. And I want to go to the film festivals and try and win some awards so I can get it out there. And I said, there's a new way. I said, have you ever heard of movies and documentary series or just documentary series? I said, well, there's a way that you could. I said, how much footage you've got? It's just 1,000 hours. I said, so we could make an 8-episode documentary series and be the first person ever to put out a movie and an 8-episode documentary that goes deep dive into the subjects of the movie. She said, yeah. So it took 11 years to make the movie. We then flew to Australia to finish it, met with the Githable tribe and filmed this closing ceremony of all the rainbow people, and it was quite amazing. Completely different. I've grown up in a woo-woo environment. My mum was a kinesiologist. She suffered from the most incredible migraines for years. When my brother was born, had to have a bucket in the passenger footwell because she would just, be sick all the time with these debilitating migraines. She went to see a kinesiologist in Holland, muscle tested her, found out what she was tolerant or intolerant to, changed her diet completely. Migraines went away. Wow. She was so blown away by the pain that she'd been in for all those years. She was like, I need to learn this. So she became a kinesiologist. So she would muscle test us. Obviously our diet was clean, all these other bits and pieces. But then Time of the Sixth Son, I was like, wow, this isn't. So I watched what she had already had. We got the movie finished, made the documentary 8 episodes in 6 weeks. We hired an editor, and I built the whole thing online. Because while I was making all those online courses, I became the go-to guy for every social media expert in the UK that wanted to make the latest update on Google AdWords, on search engine optimization, on Facebook ads. Instagram wasn't even a thing then. And so, of course, I'm sitting there being paid to learn all this amazing information. I was like, I can use all this information now to market this movie and documentary series online. So we launched it in April 2019. I paid for ads to grow an email list of 30,000 people. Turned off the ads, 30,000 grew to 76,000 people in 10 days because it went viral, which is early for it to go viral. Yeah. People were like watching it and going, wow, I want to see this. I want to see this. That 76,000 since grown to 500,000 people on an email list. They're not all on there anymore because obviously natural unsubscribes, but it's built a huge community around a micro niche subject, and spent 6 years learning how not to do it and testing multiple different price points and seeing what works and giving the whole thing away for free, and then hoping that people will, with sacred reciprocity and irony, give something back. Finding out that after 6 years, only 2% of people actually do that, maybe to 3% at a month if you're lucky. So for every 100 people that watch, 97 won't give you anything, 2 to 3 will. And so long as you can make the numbers enough, the numbers can sort of balance themselves. So I did that for a long time, worked on that here in Indonesia while I was as well, because obviously it's a UK company and I can continue working on that. And then I started doing men's work here in Bali.
When did you make the leap to? So where are you at in that process, and when and why Bali? Did you come here?
Came to Bali in 2020. It was September 2020. England had locked down on March the 24th, 2020. We'd pulled my youngest son out of school in the Easter holiday of 2020 because we wanted to go to South America for 6 months. And we'd booked our one-way flight, and we got permission from the school to take my youngest son out. My eldest son was homeschooled by that moment, so it didn't matter. And we were due to fly on the 5th of April 2020 to South America. And then England locked down 24th of March, so we couldn't go. So we'd already made some sort of decision. And then 2020 in the UK March was a month of almost 5 weeks of sunshine and blue skies. And the roads were quiet. In fact, there was no road, because people were locked down. Yeah. But because we lived in a village and we lived on the forest, we could be out. And so we're walking on the Royal Golf Course and playing in the streams and just spending quality time with the children. And Forest Road's right next to Gatwick Airport. So there's no aeroplanes. There's aeroplanes otherwise the whole time. You don't hear them in the end when you live there, but your brain blocks them out. But there was no aeroplanes. It was just beautiful time. It was a difficult time, but beautiful time. Yeah. And then obviously everything opened up. Summer was there. And then in September, my beloved, who is very gifted in the psychic realms, I would say, she had a 3-day migraine. And when she woke up on the Sunday morning, she'd had this dream that we had to leave the UK. And it sounds woo-woo as you like, but when she has these premonitions, usually she's spot on with them and I trust her. And so I said, well, where are we going to go then? She was like, she said, I don't know. I said, I just see the boys. I just saw the boys playing in the ocean. And she was like, what about Bali? I was like, I'm not moving to Bali. We 20 years of life in the UK. I'm not moving to Bali. We were renting a house by then. And then I sat with it for a little while, and then our friends were staying overnight. And he said, I've got connections with Bali, and I own a company there, and we could sort visas out. And so she said to me, we've got to be gone by Halloween, 31st of October. I was like, why? She went, I don't know. She said, we have to be out the UK by then. So we flew the 30th of October. We had 5 weeks to basically pack up our life. We sold stuff. We gave stuff away. We fostered stuff to friends and said, if we come back, we'd like it back. And if not, you can have it. Yeah. And it was the most cathartic thing just to clear out everything. We left with 4 bags and we landed on Halloween on 31st of October 2020, and England locked down on the 4th of November. So she was right. And we've been here ever since. And then, there's so many other, I could go into so much depth, but basically when we made this decision to jump, everything aligned. Yeah. Even the house we were renting, the lady was a stickler of contracts and stuff, and the contract had been up for renewal in the July. And she was really funny about not wanting me to sign a new contract. And at the time I was like, when your spidey sense goes up, I was like, something's wrong here. Yeah. And I'm sitting there and she's put the house that we're renting on the market with an agent 250 miles away, not realizing that because of the postcode, it's going to appear on local searches. And I was sitting there going, that looks like a nice house, because where we lived, there was just no houses. If they came on the market, they were sold before they were even displayed anywhere. And so, you always had the property alerts on to look for, just if you could buy a house there, it was sorted. And I was like, that's a nice house. I recognize it. And I was like, that's the house we're living in. So I rang her up and said, is there something you'd like to share with me? She's like, what do you mean? I said, well, the house that we're renting from you right now that you didn't want me to sign a contract for 2 months ago is now for sale. She's like, oh, I'm just testing the market. I was like, yeah, you are. So I said, I'm giving you my 1 month's notice now. She was like, what do you mean? It's middle of COVID. You can't give me a notice. I said, well, you should maybe talk to me before you put it on the market. And we'd made the decision to move anyway. And it was just things like that. And the day I was going to go share with my mum that we were going to move, that was the day that the rental thing all fell apart. It was just like, tick, 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 tick. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So that's why we're here.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. Well, basically up to present day. So thank you for sharing that kind of background. As we said, I think it's a bridge to like an authenticity and having a conversation. So, getting to present day stuff. So I was on kind of your kind of most recent documentary, Brotherhood Blueprint. Sorry. And
it's a tongue twister.
A little bit. And it's something close to my heart as well, because it's kind of there are a lot of overlaps of what I do here, and from the shirt company to things I think about all the time, and even going back into philosophy and understanding stoicism, the contemplation of death, and of how you structure your mind, and all but around masculinity too, and understanding that. And again, I think it's interesting even to go back into the documentary that you did about the divine feminine as well, of like how does that play out. But that being said, is like if you could chat a little bit about the latest documentary that you've created and worked on, and you're kind of in the middle of it right now.
If I may step back, because everything I've shared so far must seem like that guy's lived the golden life.
Yeah. Give us the failure stuff. You're like, but yeah.
And so we moved here in 2020, and in 2019, I sold the Forever House. And at the time, I'd already been through the Lehman Brothers crash in 2008, where, it was in our generation, the first huge financial crash. Yep. And at the time, there was Brexit. Yep. They weren't sure what was going to happen with the euro. The euro was going up and down, up and down. And in the United Kingdom, you're only insured for up to £80,000, which is about $100,000, but more, if the bank goes bust.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you sell a house and you put all your money in the bank and the bank goes bust, you're only going to get back 110,000 US.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not taking that risk, because I'd seen it before.
Yep.
And so I was in a business mastermind, and I spoke to my friends in the group, and what would you do? And then they said, well, we've got this investment, this property company, hotel management. That would be good. And then a friend of mine was like, we're amalgamating all these marketing companies to create one big company. It's going to list. That would be a good place to put it. And then there was another one, and then there was a shop, and then there was all these things. So basically I just spread it. And then when COVID came, it took the lot out.
Wow.
And so I'm talking the lot. So it went from having an asset and a house to gone in 3 months. And that level of humbling has been difficult, financially really difficult, especially living here, because it's not easy to work here. Hence why, I still have my business in the UK with the movie and documentary series, but even that was sort of plateauing.
Yeah.
And to go through that level of humbling from abundance to not that quickly was a super shock to the ego, and just the shame and all the hindsight, the bad decisions, how did I potentially let that happen? How have I put my family in this situation? How did I do this? What was I thinking? You go back and replay every scenario of what would I have done different, and slowly drive yourself potty. I slowly drive myself potty with it. And then things got really difficult financially. Wasn't, sometimes eating one meal a day myself just so I could keep food for the kids, and thinking I've got all this knowledge, and but you end up in this. I ended up in this downward spiral, and it just the task to get financial abundance back in felt so great that I just ended up self-sabotaging myself. And I can see it now with hindsight. It's a wonderful thing. And yet you've got to put on this persona. You've got to put on this, everything's fine, got to be there, got to be the dad, got to be the husband, got to be the supporter, got to be the friend. And in the summer of 2024, I heard about this group of guys that had started here called the Bali Brotherhood. And I think they started with 7. And then I joined about a month later. I went to an event they ran, and I almost didn't go in. It was a converted villa here, and I walked in, and there was just probably 60 guys. And some of them, you've been huge, covered in tattoos, they look like Harley Davidson drivers, and I was just like, whoa, this is intense. And I was wobbly myself. I was like, this is really overwhelming. And I actually got halfway in, and then I started walking back, and I got back to my scooter. I was like, what are you doing? I said, what's the worst that could happen? You walk in there, you have a terrible hour, and you leave, and you never have to go again. And I'm so glad I had the confidence to walk back in, because then when they started talking and sharing and their ideas and what the plan was, and they said, we're going to be here every Saturday morning just for guys that need a space to come and talk and to be vulnerable and to open up and to not be the lone wolf. So I went on that Saturday morning, and then I went several times, and then I actually made a pledge to myself I was going to go every single Saturday because I needed it for my own mental health, unless I was not in the country. And because we had no funds, I wasn't leaving the country. So I would just go every single weekend. And then after multiple weekends of being there, they said, would you like to facilitate one of the smaller circles? I was like, yeah, I'd love to. And they said, have you done this before? I said, yeah, I've been doing men's work for about 15 years, but not like this. So I had that support.
Yeah.
And then I turned 50 in January of 25. And the months coming up to it, it felt like something ominous was happening. I remember as a 30-year-old going to my cousin's 50th and thinking, you old fucker. And I was like, that's me. I am now that guy.
Old fucker. Yeah.
And I was like, but this, because of everything that had just fallen apart and the whole, rebuild of all the foundations, everything that had ever happened, whatever I touched worked. Whatever I touched, turned to gold.
Right.
I had that energy, had that enthusiasm, had that confidence. And just to go from that to this, what I felt like this husk of a man putting on the performance, having to be the extrovert when just wanted to be the introvert, was so tricky. And I had the Bali Brotherhood, I had the guys, and I also had a smaller men's circle that I'm part of here, just 10 guys, and I was sharing every 2 weeks. And I remember driving my youngest son to school every day because couldn't afford the driver. It was cheaper for me to do it, keep more money. So I was driving him to school and back every day. It's like 35 minutes there, 35 minutes back. And I was waking up for about 8 to 10 weeks, 4 o'clock every single morning, having panic attacks, like my heart coming out my chest. And I'd fall asleep at around 10, 11 o'clock at night. And I would wake up having panic attacks. And I was like, what's going on? Because I'd never experienced anything like it. Debilitating. So I started smoking cigarettes because it was the only thing that I could do to calm my nervous system. I cut out alcohol. I cut out caffeine. I cut out chocolate. I cut out matcha. I cut out every single stimulant I could. So I was like, whatever's going up here, just could not lower the cortisol levels, could not lower the vagus nerve, could not calm it, was listening to meditations, was doing anything and everything I could think of just to get my body back to homeostasis. Wasn't happening. And it went on for weeks, just week after week. And then you're getting tireder and tireder and tireder, and still trying to keep everything going to the outside world, despite going to Brotherhood and I was sharing what was going on in the smaller circles we're in. But then you get to the point of people have got to be sick and tired of hearing this victim mentality I have in my head, despite the fact that I'm really trying not to be a victim. But when you're in that spiral, it's so hard. It's so hard not to look at everybody else and go, God, you've got it so easy. I used to have that. I used to have this. I used to have that, trying to get back to where I was. And that's where I realized was the fatal mistake.
Yeah.
And then one day I was driving home. I dropped Jack off in the morning, and then I'd go and sit next to the river near the school, and I'd smoke. And I would use ChatGPT as my therapist. And it would say, right, do this breathing exercise, do this grounding, say this affirmation out loud. And I was doing it all. And I was like, okay, this is actually helping, because it would help me break state. Because I knew about NLP. So I was like, you've got to break the state, got to change the mind pattern, got to change the thoughts. But it was very hard to get out. In fact, Chris Howard, who was an NLP guy here, he says, you can't see the label from inside the jar. I was like, that's so true. And when you're in it, it's very difficult to look outside to see, how do I fix this? How do I read this? And I was driving home. It's giving me goosebumps right now. And this, these massive green trucks they have here. And I was like, I'm in debt. Can't afford the school fees. Can't afford to put food in the fridge. Sleep deprived. Panic attacks. Still going to Bali Brotherhood. Still going to the other Brotherhood. Sharing what's going on, but not really what's going on. I was just like, just drive into it. And in that moment, I was like, you need help. I almost can't speak. Because you've got 50 years old and you're thinking about taking your own life. I was like, now you really need help. And I wouldn't do it. And I would never do it. Because I have a sleep at night tax. And I couldn't do that to my boys. And it was then that I started researching suicide. And it was then that I found out that 740,000 people take their own lives every year. And 555,000 of those are men. And then I divided that by 365. And I was like, that's 1,521 men every single day. Then I divided that by the number of minutes. And it's over 1 man every single minute. I was like, I want to try and stop that.
After that moment, what's next? What do you do next? Yeah.
It was the fact that thought even came into my head was the scary thing. And I realized that I needed to pay closer attention. And I'd been doing Brotherhood. I was turning up to the Bali Brotherhood on a Saturday morning and holding space and sharing there what was going on. And I was also in a smaller men's group, but there was only 9 other men.
But still, I feel like that there's like shame. There was something where you still didn't feel comfortable.
Oh, I did
sharing.
feel really uncomfortable. Because it was that we try not to go into a space of victimhood.
Yeah.
And when you're that low, it's pretty hard not to. And so I was very aware that I couldn't turn up every week sharing the same thing. Whereas I could have, and actually it's probably what I needed to. But again, men put on masks to cover up, to be the good dad, to be the good father, to be the good partner, to be the good friend. And that's, in essence, where the next part of this story came from. Because I realized if I had that thought, even though I would never do it, how many men are having that thought and don't have the support of a men's circle or a brotherhood? And
I feel like even the wife and family and, you know, just even what you have and all the things, even though things seem so bleak, and I think that's where most men see it, like they see only the negative. They only see the bleak, but there is incredible abundance out there that you almost turn a blind eye to. You know?
I think it was the sleep deprivation.
Yeah.
I think weeks of 3-4 hours a night and then waking up, not calmly, but with that adrenaline pumping, cortisol pumping, and unable to calm that vagus nerve.
Yeah.
I think that had a major effect on my mental health. And because I'd done Time of the Sixth Son, I'd spent 6 years learning how not to do that, building that out from nothing to the success it became. I then had the idea of how can I impact men and the women that love them and the single mums raising boys by themselves and globalize almost what we do on a Saturday morning and what I do every other Tuesday night. And that's when I came up with the idea of the Brotherhood Blueprint, and to find 44 men and women to interview to talk about a whole different range of subjects, from the benefits of a brotherhood circle, whether men were frightened before they went the first time, whether it took courage to actually even step into that space, and without exception, every single one of them said, yeah, it takes courage. You know, I'm confident in my everyday world, but walking into something like that it was really confronting. So that was beautiful to capture all that. And then we look into addiction, sex, porn, the father wound, the mother wound, boys who grew up without dads, boys who grew up with absent dads, boys who grew up with violent mothers. There's an entire array. Yeah. And I think I got just under 24 hours of content from, I think more actually, 28 hours of content from those 44 interviews. And I've broken that down into 1,200 individual clips, and then piecing that together as the jigsaw to create the episodes. It was originally going to be 9 episodes, and now it's going to be 10 episodes, because I'm going to have an entire episode dedicated to the woman's view, to the feminine perspective on the masculine, and that itself is fascinating.
Yeah, it's a balance. Like they can't have one without the other. And I think there's the Way of the Superior Man. Robert Dida talks about this balance that's there. And even in the chat with that, I've seen guys talk about, like, I don't like to call it masculine, feminine, but I'm like, for me, I'm like, I absolutely like to call it that, because I mean, I've been with my wife 20 years, and I think you've been in a similar, and it's like there's a balancing effect when you co-create a life and children together, and it's something there that it's tough and struggle, but I think worth it, and I think that perspective is unique and needed in something like that. So how is this, you know, was that was maybe the inflection point? So again, kind of as I asked before, it's like, what's next? It's like, how do you see this playing out? What's the moonshot of this?
The moonshot, I love that question, is that we're going to give the whole documentary series away for free. So there's absolutely no barrier to entry, so that any man, any woman, any young person can watch it. I say young person, probably over the age of 16, because some of the content in there is pretty graphic. Yeah. And the moonshot is that we want to create online circles and global circles. So we want to formulate and create a formula from what we do on a Saturday morning, because it works because of its simplicity. Yep. And then we want to encourage men to contact us to say, I would like to run one of these circles either in my local town or my village or my city. And then we want to do online ones as well. So the moonshot is that we end up with 49 a week, 7 times a day across 7 days a week, and in multiple different time zones, so that any moment where a man thinking, I just could do with stepping into a space where I can talk, where I can share, where I can be listened to, where I can be actively listened to, rather than guided or coached. So that's the big.
And so the next part is that, so I've been a few times and I've really enjoyed it. And I think a lot of people, when they go the first time, skeptical of it. And I was. And then I really appreciated how it went. And Ryan, when he's there, Tip runs it, and maybe and some of the other guys do it. But I'd love you to kind of walk us through what that looks like, because I think it's unique. I liked it. I think the best part of it that I liked was when you break out into smaller groups. And I think the first or second time Atlas was there, and you know him, and he was in the documentary, and he, his space that he held in the small groups, he was just like, you get 2 or 3 minutes, I forgot. 5 minutes, and then it's just like silence, and he's like stares at you to be like, whatever you want to share, and it was silence, and I thought that was prophetic, to just whatever you want, go. And men open up when they're like, I don't know, and then give it 30 seconds, and then they just let everything out. So that being said, I was like, I like that, because that was that vulnerability piece that is so important for men to be able to have with other men. So to back up, just kind of give us a flow of how it works.
So we start with a win circle. So no matter how many men turn up, whether there's 30 or 60, we'll get everybody together, and we'll obviously curtail the time, because we've only got guys there for 2 hours, because you want it to be enough that it makes an impact, but not too long where they go, it's too much of my day. And so we allow them to share what's their win for the week, for the month, for the year, and then what's alive in them right now. And what does that mean in less woo-woo terms? What are you feeling? Are you angry? Are you pissed off? Are you irritable? If you had a blow up with your partner, did somebody annoy you on the way here? You got road rage? Or are you excited? Doesn't matter. Everything's welcome. And just by doing that, sometimes, I wake up early on a Saturday morning, and I've had a heavy week, and I think, can I really be bothered to go there? And within 10 minutes of that starting, you just feel my whole body going, because you're hearing that every single man is going through their own stuff with the tools they have at the time. Yeah. And when you listen to all of those different wins and all those different what's alive for me right now, it's like, I resonate with that, or I resonate with that. It's just, it's an amazing feeling. And then we talk about the 5 agreements, which we have, which creates a safe container.
Agreed.
It's basically a box with boundaries.
And I like that. I think those are really important. Well, for me at least. Yeah, I think everybody.
Men need those. Boys need those. It's just this is what's cool and this is what's not cool.
Yeah.
And it creates that space of, okay, everybody knows we're now at a level. We know what we can talk about. We know what is acceptable, and we know what's not acceptable. And then, as you said, if there's 45 people there, we'll break off into groups of 6 or 5 or 6, and then everybody gets 5 minutes to share, but with no interruption, active listening. For guys, that's really hard. Active listening, to actually stay present with the other man and really listen to what he's saying, not start solving his problem in your head,
right,
and realize a minute and a half later you haven't listened to a word he's just said. It's the biggest complaint I hear from the feminine as well, is that men just trying to solve the problem.
I think
and often
my wife told me that the other day, so I
keep learning. We all keep learning. And we naturally want to solve. We're natural problem solvers. It's the way we're geared. But obviously then that takes real discipline. No phones on the table, phone away. You use a phone for a 5-minute timer, and then when that timer goes off, the guy comes to a natural finish. The real impetus is for guys to go, oh, can I help? And that's the space holder's job, is to go, no, now who'd like to go next? And it doesn't have to go in a circle, it can go popcorn style.
Yep.
What I found, having done this now for almost 2 years in that format, is that if you get one guy that goes deep and starts to share, he opens the doors for the others to go. And the number of times I've had men afterwards come up to me and go, I really didn't know what I was going to talk about today. And that's entirely normal.
Yep.
And then they hear something that somebody else says that triggers something, and they go, oh my God, that's been bothering me for years. I'm going to talk about that. And then they let it out. And then you see their shoulders drop. You see the energetic sigh. It isn't, you don't, but it's just a,
yeah.
And that's where the magic comes.
Yep.
And then after those 5-minute circles, at the end, if we have time, then a guy can say, hey, listen, I'm having this problem with my partner. I'm feeling out of balance. I'm doing all the work and I come home and, this hasn't been done or that. And how do I approach that? And then there's 5 or 6 other men that can go, oh, okay, I've been through that. I've got the lived experience. Let me share what that is like. But we ask men to only share from lived experience, not what they've read in a book or not what they've seen on a podcast. Something that's actually worked for them in their lives, and just the magic of that. And actually, usually by then, that's it. It sounds so simple, but that's why it works. Yep. Because there's no leader to become egoic. There's no, the guys that we choose to run those, facilitate those small circles, hold it. They hold that container. They make it a safe space for the guys to share. And that's why you have men turning up week after week. And I've seen astonishing changes in men that have turned up broken and then going through paternal or paternity issues, those sort of things, which really affect a man. Because who do you talk about that with? Especially when you're, far away from home. Yeah. And just seeing week after week these little increments of improvement, and then suddenly 3 months later, this guy's in and he's like, oh, wow, I feel great. I've been through it. I've done it. I've learned it. I've had those lessons. And that's the magic.
Wow. Yeah. Interesting.
And so the reason I then created the Brotherhood Blueprint was because I thought if I could take that magic and I could turn it to something that becomes accessible freely around the globe, and off the back of that we can build a movement. So the next question is usually, well, how are you going to monetize a product like that? Well, because we're going to offer a monthly membership, and a percentage of that monthly membership will go to funding suicide hotlines, so that every single month a man is thinking, I'm making a difference. I'm putting somebody on a phone that's going to be there for that person who's on the edge. Yeah. And then we'll also give them access to phenomenal interviews, podcasts. We're building our own studios that we can do 8 podcasts a month with really interesting people that have got lots to share, lots of wisdom to give out. And then they get access to the full 44 interviews, and they can get immediate access to all the episodes and MP3s and podcasts. And we're going to create a book, and there's all these other bits that go with it. But in essence, we just want guys to become part of a community, and we're going to build a community online where men can just come in and ask a question. And then suddenly it's not 1 or 2 men giving them help. There's, forums of them from all over the world with all different experience. And with the benefit of AI now, you imagine if we can start reading that, we can almost build our own sort of brotherhood bot that will be able to help men when they've got a specific answer. Say, well, based on what, Blake said from Colorado, for example, this is what worked for him. We've got huge pictures. We were planning to run an 1,800 man event, 3-day in Bali, to invite men in and get the speakers on stage just to talk and to, create community. And we've got huge plans.
Well, I like that, because I think when a word that came to mind is interconnected. Is like that is the deal, and even like I have a conversation. Like that's kind of why I do what I do, is that I think that real, authentic human connection, authenticity, is where it's at. That's where the future is. In the epoch of AI, but also that's all cool and sexy, but it's a conversation. Because I feel like you don't know when somebody's going to take their own life. And they say, well, did you see the signs of this and that? And I'm like, because I've been very close to it multiple times, and you don't know. But it's like, but the most part is like, no one was having a conversation with them. No one was reaching out, having that. And I think that to be vulnerable and to do that and to reach out and kind of doing what you're doing is, I think, the key. I feel it. It resonates with me in the process, even just to have that group. It's cool. And I think, like you said, it's like every time. I mean, there have been 100 guys or more, or 30 or whatever, and it fluctuates. But again, that consistency, and you see it. I feel it with it. You can see all of the chatter within the WhatsApp, and you see this interconnection, which I think is incredible. So I'm excited for that. And I'm also in it, so maybe check it out too. So yeah, I guess we go to that. What's next? Moonshot, monetizing.
I spoke to my business coach,
Yeah.
and he said to me, "You have a duty to make as much money out of this as you possibly can." He said, "Please do not turn this into another feel-good, do-good project that fails after 6 months."
Yeah.
He said, because if you can get this working and you can get the monetization on it working, he said the impact that you'll be able to have around the world and the real impact we'll be able to have by funding suicide hotlines all over the world, because we know we have regular recurring income coming in at like £17 or 19 euros or $21.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a lot for a lot of people. For some people right now, that is a lot, but there will be enough people out there that will go, I'll do that. If I know that every single month I'm keeping somebody on a telephone line that's going to stop a man taking his own life, that's what we're going to do.
Hell yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, the one here in Indonesia, you know, it's really struggling. But I'm not sure even if it's going right this moment. I know they're about to do another huge fundraising, and I'm going to, you know, that's the first one I'm going to support.
What are the requirements to be on the line or monitor it? Are there any requirements that they have to be met?
They need to be trained.
Okay.
Yeah. So what we will do is we will, for the online circles that we're going to run, the online men's groups, for the smaller ones, we're going to make sure that they have a basic level of understanding of what we do.
Sure.
But there will be an escalation process. So if there is a man that comes into there that we reckon is at risk, then there will be intervention protocols in place, because none of us want that, you know, that on our hands.
Yeah.
And we're not trained in that. We're trained in listening.
Yeah.
We can all be good at listening if we just shut this up a little bit. But there will be stages. I've only had it once at the Bali Brotherhood, where there was one man and I was like, this needs a higher level of support.
Yep.
And so we got the guy immediately in touch with that.
Something that comes to mind in a little, like in the same realm is that, so in the U.S., they just signed a executive order, FDA, to use ibogaine. And, you know, I don't know how it all be rolled out, because it's a very unique substance, maybe the most powerful psychedelic that we know of. And I've seen it firsthand, life-changing, like a magic pill, very powerful, not recreational at all, but I'd love to get maybe your take on, in that realm of psychedelics and some of those areas as well, of how you see them playing out and helping men and people, you know, men and women generally, and they're dealing with mental health and struggle.
I have to be careful how do I say this. I am a big proponent, is that the right word? I'm in support of psychedelics in a safe environment.
Yeah.
In the movie Time of the Sixth Sun, we talk about ayahuasca, we talk about peyote, we talk about San Pedro or Wachuma. And I think in the right environment, all of those things can be incredibly powerful tools, but they should be treated as sacred medicine, not as you do this for shits and giggles on a Saturday night, which unfortunately is what's happening. I have experienced ibogaine myself, and it was incredible. As in, they talk about it as being the ego death, and it's not a pleasant journey to go through. Neither's ayahuasca, but when you come out the other side of it, it's almost like you've had years of therapy in one night. But I must caveat: don't just do this with a mate. Do this with people that have been trained in shamanism, or go to Peru or go to South America and actually sit and do it properly. Doing it in your friend's apartment on a Saturday night, it opens the realms up to things that you don't necessarily want jumping you energetically. And so, just be careful. But I think it's a beautiful thing. And the Bwiti people, that my only concern is that then what happens with the ibogaine?
Right.
Does Big Pharma then decide they're going to try and synthesize it? At which point the magic will be gone, because the plant element, the medicine element of it, is gone.
Think that there's it's been told to me that it's sentient. And I think it loses that when it's just synthesized from
100%
from like oil or whatever, petros, chemicals, and so you're like, same. You're like, I don't think it has the same magic.
And then we could go down a huge rabbit hole of why are these things not allowed in the first place? Why is ayahuasca not allowed? You know, why is mushrooms not allowed? Psilocybin. Why is wachuma not allowed? It's
I
just
don't
a
even know what that
heart-opening.
is.
It's San Pedro. It's cactus.
Okay, gotcha.
But it's just, whereas ayahuasca is more the feminine and the snake and takes you on these journeys, the wachuma is very much grounding. It's a very sour tasting cactus powder, and you would usually have it on a spoon and eat it and then swig it down with water. And it takes 30 to 40 minutes to have an effect, sometimes an hour. But when it does, you just have this astonishing connection with nature. And if you do that outside and you see the trees and you see the streams and everything becomes alive.
Yeah.
But not in a psychedelic mushroom where it can be quite overwhelmingly and unpleasant at times if you've had too much, or if you're not, if your body isn't prepared for it. It's a most beautiful experience. But again, do it with somebody who knows what they're doing, because
absolutely,
you just need to, if something goes tits up, if it goes wrong, that's such an English expression. If it goes wrong, you need someone there that can keep everybody on track.
I always equate, because you said about being in nature, and the movie Avatar, where they're in nature and they're walking around, and it's like you see it, the visually interconnected, and it's beautiful, IMAX and everything. And I love being out in nature, whatever. And I'm like, that's not some far off planet, wherever that was, whatever it was called. That's right here. It is like that. If you want to be aware enough, discerning enough, thoughtful enough, present enough, it's exactly how this world works. Mm. And I think that when you have some experiences like that, you have that realization where you're like, oh my God. Well, one is just thank you for sharing. Like, that's why I do what I do here. Theo, thank you.
Thank you for listening.
It's meaningful. It doesn't go on deaf ears. And I know people who hear, whoever sit across from me as to share and to be vulnerable, because I think that vulnerability is a superpower. Mm. It carries such incredible weight across to anybody, men, women, whoever, and it never goes unnoticed. So thank you for your time, and thank you for being here today. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. And then, so just to recap, it's a Bali Brotherhood. So, excuse me.
So Bali Brotherhood is the men's group that we run here.
Okay.
So that's from 7 to 800 guys in just under 2 years.
And so that's every Saturday morning.
8 a.m.
8 a.m.
And then the project off the back of that is brotherhoodblueprint.com.
Got it.
Which is the 9-part documentary series that men can, and women, because there's plenty of women that want to watch it to understand more about how the men work. And then there's 23 million single mums out there bringing boys up by themselves.
All right, we'll have all of that information in in the link, in the info and description. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Cheers, Blake. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Some days the violence speaks first. Both voices earn their place. Life hit me with riddles that didn't come with warnings. Said here, solve this before sunrise. So I learned to think with my fists and feel with my mind. Because the order didn't matter as long as I stayed standing. Every lesson came wrapped in a bruise or a sunrise. Some bruises taught more, some sunrises hurt worse. But each one pushed me towards something cleaner, something sharp, something real enough to anchor me when the current tried to drag me sideways. Yeah, I don't pretend to have answers. I got patterns, I got the echo of choices I made in states I have wisdom. I got a compass that only works when I stop forcing the direction. And still I keep moving, slow and deliberate like a man trying to